Hello, and welcome to Finding Genealogy Research Springboards in Family Stories. I'm Margaret Eves, and I'm with the Cobb County Public Library System. Today's presentation will help you to leverage useful information from family stories and oral history interviews. It'll help you develop action plans for genealogy research, and it'll help you prepare for doing future oral history interviews with family. And so that'll help you grow your family tree. So today we're going to talk about that and also some library resources, including Ancestry Library Edition, and I'll give you a little demo of that and how to use it with tidbits from your family history stories. So when you think about it, you can get a lot of clues from family stories, and it may be stories that you've heard over the years, which is probably why you got interested in family history. It can be stories from an oral history interview, and it can be details that we discover while doing research. So one thing we want to talk about is family lore versus facts. We want to use family lore, some of those stories we hear growing up, only as clues and not facts. The lore that we hear, it needs more documentation, and we want to avoid passing on incorrect information. So that's why we do the research. And it's not that our family members were intentionally lying to us. There was a good story, so they passed it on. But sometimes that lore gets a little manipulated or changed around, kind of like gossip does. And so it can cover up a story that's true. So what we want to do is fill in the details and reveal more clues, and we want to put meat on the bones of our genealogy and really show the family history. So an example I'm going to give you today is my uncle Albert Davis, and the stories that I heard growing up included that he'd gone to Georgia Tech and that he was a big Georgia Tech football fan. I heard that he worked for Coca-Cola and he lived all over the world. And then I also heard from my mom that he'd been married and divorced to an Atlanta debutante. So I wanted to learn more about that. So what I looked for were details, things like names and relationships, and something that's called the fan club, which is a concept that Elizabeth Shown Mills has shared. And it's looking for friends, associates, and neighbors. Those can be important clues to help you learn more about an ancestor. Also, you want to look for dates and time period of when that person lived. And for example, I know that my uncle was born in 1902. And so I want to extrapolate from that the years he might have gone to college or the years he might have gotten married. And then you also want to focus on places. For example, I know Georgia Tech is located in Atlanta, and so I can use Atlanta as a place name. And then you want to look for organization names and note those. For example, Georgia Tech or Georgia Institute of Technology, the company he worked for, which is Coca-Cola, and in some cases it might be a club or a church or religion, and then military service can also be an important clue. So you want to focus on a specific question that you want to pursue. What question do you want to answer? What organizations or events could have documents or records? And then you want to look for those records to back up the stories that you've heard. And I always encourage genealogists to use a research log. And it can be digital or printed, whichever works for you. Some good, oops, let me back up here. Some good sources for research logs include familysearch.org, and you can search there on research log. Or Cindy's List is a great resource for genealogy. And if you search on research methodology or research plans or look in those categories, that can help you out. So here's an example. When I was searching for information about my uncle, Albert Davis, I put his name here, and then I said, I'm going to find records from Georgia Tech and Coca-Cola. And then anything I did related to that, I would log what I did. So here's the date of when I searched something at the Georgia Tech archives and then the Coca-Cola archives and what I did. That helps you stay organized. And then if you have to put down the research for a while, which we often have to do, and then pick it up a few weeks or a few months later, you'll remember what you did. So in this example, I contacted Georgia Tech. I contacted their archives and actually emailed their archivist, and she guided me towards doing some research online. And then I was able to make an appointment to go visit in person. And through that research, I was able to find yearbook information, some college newspaper articles, and some sports photos. Some other college or school sources you can look for are on Ancestry Library Edition. They have a yearbooks collection, which I'll show you in a little bit. Archive Grid is a way to find archives. Digital Public Library of America is a terrific resource. Their website is very short. It's dp.la. And if you search by location or by a school name, you might discover some very useful information. Also, newspapers can give you sports coverage or other coverage about a school. And some places to look for newspapers include Chronicling America, which is at loc.gov. And there's also access through our website, cobcat.org. Digital Library of Georgia, if you have Georgia ancestors, they have Georgia Historic Newspapers collection. And then check with other local historical societies. For example, the Atlanta History Center was able to help me with images from the Atlanta Journal and Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspapers. So in this example, I also searched for company information. I knew he worked for Coca-Cola. I contacted the Coca-Cola company archives. I was able to find them online and I emailed them. And they provided me with some of these images from a Coca-Cola company publication. And so I was able to see images of my uncle in China in the 1930s. So that was pretty amazing. This was actually from 1941. Another place to look for company information is in company histories. In this case, there was an unofficial history of Coca-Cola called For God, Country, and Coca-Cola, which was a book published. And I actually contacted the author in that case to see if he had interesting information. And then city directories, which you can access on Ancestry Library Edition, are also very useful, as well as historic newspapers and advertisements that you can find also in city directories. Life events for, in this example with my uncle, he had gotten married. And so I decided to search on newspapers, and I actually found a story of his engagement. And within that story, there is information about his genealogy. They talked about his parents, his grandparents, and great-grandparents. So that, again, those were clues. I didn't take those as fact, even though it was in a newspaper, but I thought, well, this is another place I can look for information. So an important thing to remember when you're doing genealogy research is to cite your sources. That is essential. That's going to, and even cite the source of your original story, even if it's personal knowledge, make a note of that. If you make a note of that information in your database, you'll want to note that the information is from personal knowledge. And so that way you can evaluate that information later. You can back it up with additional sources. And so for each source that you find, you want to cite your source. And I'm going to show you a little bit about where to find that information in a minute. So you can create placeholders for that information in your genealogy database. And then cite specific sources and create source citations in that genealogy database. And I encourage you to have a database that you have on your own computer. So let's take a deeper dive into Ancestry Library Edition yearbooks. So I'm going to see if I can go online and show you that. So on the Cobb County Library website, if we go to Research Resources and go down to the Georgia room, we scroll down and look for online databases, and we can click directly to Ancestry Library Edition from there. There's several ways to access this, but right now we're going to go this way. And just a note, normally you could only access Ancestry Library Edition when you're at the library. During the time of the pandemic, when there's limited library service, ProQuest is allowing people to access Ancestry Library Edition through our website. If you are accessing it from home, you might have to log in with your library card number and PIN. I've already done that. And so now I'm going to show you the link that will take you directly to some yearbooks. You could always go up to Search and Card Catalog and search on yearbooks as a keyword, or go down here to this link, or as I showed you, they have a link directly here. But if that's not there, you can go to the card catalog or the catalog. So I want to use the yearbooks collection, which is right here. So I'm going to click on that. And then there's two ways to access the yearbooks. I could do a search for a name, or I could browse the collection. And when you browse it, it allows you to go straight to you can search a state and then by city, and then it gives you a list of the school names that they have. So that's an interesting way to approach it. I'm going to actually do a search on the name. I'm going to enter his name, and I'm going to enter a place because I know I want to stick with Atlanta, and because Albert Davis is such a common name. And then it says any event and a year, and I'm going to give 1923 in a range, about 2 to 3 years, because I know he was born in 1902. I figured he was probably in college somewhere between 1922, 1921 to 1925. And I'm going to go ahead and do a search. And what I get are a list of results. These look pretty good. I could look at this one, but I'm going to start with this record here, partly because I happen to know what it is. But there's his name, Albert Davis. So let's take a look closer at the image. And there it is, Albert Davis. I do a close, yeah, I've seen some pictures of him at that age, and that looks like him. Also, his nickname was Red, and it says here, they tell about him. Red prepped at Culver and learned to play football up there in Indiana. Well, that gives me some information right there. Prepped meaning he went to prep school or high school at Culver in Indiana. So that gives me something else to search on. I could find out where he went to high school. That was another little tidbit of family lore, was that he went to a military academy and that he got kicked out. So at least I can find out if he actually went to this Culver and if that was a military academy. Now I can save this. I can either email it home if I'm at the library, or if I'm on my own computer, I can save it to this computer. So I would do that, but I also want to make a note of the source information. This is going to show details, related databases. Source is what's really important. So I can select all that text and copy it. I may not want all of this, but at least it's always a good idea to read about the source. But I definitely want to copy I'd say this amount of information and use that for my source citation. So I would copy that into probably my research log, so I would have that information. So I can go through and look at all these sources, all these records, and save them and copy the source information to use and then to share with my family. So going back to more tips, again, there are other library resources that you can use. Ancestry Library Edition is a great one. Family Search, when you use within the library, allows you to see some digitized microfilm. And then also Fold 3, Heritage Quest, and Jewish Data are great library resources that you can access at cobcat.org. The important thing about doing this kind of research is understanding the context of your ancestors' lives. You want to read about the history of the area and look online for local history museums and societies. And if possible, visit the locations where your ancestors lived. And remember that your relatives won't be around forever. When someone dies, a library of information dies with them. So if possible, interview your relatives now or see if they can send you some photos or information. Do always ask if there's a story that they tell you, if it's okay to share it with other members of the family, or what about beyond family, and respect their wishes. And always, never ever share personal information of living people on the internet. So when you do share it, there's lots of ways to do it. You can share some of these stories and the records and details in a family newsletter. You can share it in a Zoom meeting, and you can also make short videos. But always respect copyright when you're doing that. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning about ways to find clues in your family stories and make research plans from them. You can share this video with others. And be sure to look on cobcat.org for more resources and more programs that you can enjoy. Thanks.